Tony, what's up? As you see, I'm JTH, and I got a new sonic screwdriver.
That is the fourth Doctor's screwdriver.
Yeah, Tom Baker.
I don't know.
The only downside is this one doesn't light up.
Yeah, and you can't push a button. You have to pull down on it to make it go.
That's actually the cool part. I like that.
It's the first ever Sonic, right?
No, the first ever one was from the second Doctor.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
This is like the second one that was made.
I see. I wonder what the first one looked like.
It was just like a regular stick with a light on the end. I wonder why that one lit up and this one doesn't. And one thing is, how does he read the readings like he did in the chambers with the other? Maybe in this little red orb up here.
What about this thing down here? There's like a little thing down here.
Oh, I don't know, maybe.
Okay, we gotta do this video.
Anyways, like we said, we're going in a pattern. We're reading a shipping fanfic called The Princess and The Pupil, and I'm guessing, judging by the title, it's Twilight and Princess Celestia shipping fanfic.
Yay! I like that couple. It's cute.
So anyways, here we go. The Princess and the Pupil.
Yep.
Her amethyst eyes flared open as the Alcorn's internal clock told her it was time to raise the sun. She was groggy at first, but as her mind cleared, her plans for today flooded back into her mind. Celestia hopped out of bed and shook herself off, then stepped behind her bed and went out onto the balcony. She took a deep breath of morning air, smelling the crisp mountainside and fresh dew-laden grass. It was her favorite time of day. The sun was about to rise and Equestria was just beginning to wake. Closing her eyes, she focused magic into her horn, which glowed a vibrant gold. On the horizon, the fiery orb crawled up began following its course. Celestia smiled, now gazing upon her country bathed in orange. Today is going to be splendid. Walking back inside, she approached her desk and took a seat on the large overstuffed cushion in front of it. In front of her rested a calendar that took up most of the surface of the desk. Each day was marked with a multitude of activities. There was one day, though, that was blank except for one single word: Twilight. Today's the big day, she hummed, leaning down and opening one of the drawers. From it she withdrew a scroll. The parchment unfurled itself to reveal a list of items that had yet to be checked off, but one was about to be changed. Celestia took a quill and dipped it in the nearby inkpot and looked to a miniature cabinet sitting upon her desk. It had several necklaces and decorative trinkets, yet there was one item she focused on. With a light smile, she marked off one item of the list. She rolled up the scroll and started to stand, but her eyes caught a letter on the opposite side of her desk. Celestia recognized it as Twilight's most recent friendship report. Sitting herself back down, she took the report and started to read over it. Twilight, my student, you've grown so much since you left. I just don't know where I would be without you. Aww. That's cute. The statement was meant in earnest, for Twilight and her friends have been there where Celestia had failed. The unicorn had proven herself to be loyal and faithful, and that is exactly what the princess needed.
Okay, it's interesting so far.
Yeah. Rolling the letter back up, she floated over to a small chest and tucked it away with many other tied scrolls. Each and every one proof of her students' love and devotion, and each one made Celestia's days all the brighter. Now it was time for Celestia to show that she truly cared. Taking her list with her, she began to prepare for the day ahead. There was much to be done, and everything had to be perfect. The first order of business was to go to the castle cellar. There was a particular bottle of champagne she had her eye on.
Champagne? You're going to drink, Celestia?
Yeah, it's a fanfic. Let him do whatever the hell he wants.
I'm playing around, dude. You know that.
I know. Okay. Twilight Sparkle stood outside the gates to Canterlot with her violet mane fluttering in the breeze. On her back were a pair of saddlebags. One of the flaps hung open. In front of her, encased in a deep red aura, was an unfurled note. Her eyes scanned over it as she tried to make sense of the text. It was a simple letter, not even breaking 2 lines of light, yet it still filled her with a sense of worry. And excuse me.
You okay, pal?
Yeah, just a bit of a burp there. And a bit of confusion. My dearest Twilight, please come to Canterlot as soon as you can. It's very important. Also, I hope you enjoyed the flowers. Sincerely, Princess Celestia.
I think Celestia is gonna admit that she loves her or something.
Yeah. I hope this is nothing serious, Twilight mumbled, rolling the letter back up and tucking it away. The last thing we need is another Discord or Nightmare Moon incident.
No.
With a light sigh, Twilight stepped through the gates and began walking towards the castle. As she stepped through the stage, she couldn't help but think of the lilacs the princess had sent her.
Lilacs. Okay.
Twilight stood. Oh, this is a flashback. Twilight stood next to a bookshelf, horn glowing as she dusted off each of the shelves. Spike was on the opposite side of the room doing the same thing. It was her monthly shelf cleaning day. So all the books were carefully put into stacks and organized outside the cases so the wood could be brushed and polished. Spike had always thought it to be a silly habit, but Twilight had looked forward to it each month. It was fun. Achoo! Until something went wrong. With a groan, she looked behind her to see Spike stumbling into a pile of books that had toppled over. Spike, we're supposed to be keeping these in order. Now we need to spend more time organizing and less time cleaning. The dragon rolled out of the book pile and rubbed his nose and looked around himself and groaned. Sorry, Twi. I think this dust gives me allergies, or... Spike paused and began to inhale, but instead of a sneeze like Twilight had expected, he instead burped an emerald flame. The fires faded off, depositing a scroll and oddly enough, a bouquet of flowers. Of lavender flowers. Huh, that's new. Twilight raised an eyebrow and approached the two objects, but focusing mostly on the colorful blossoms levitating them in front of her, and she gave them a tentative sniff. Lilac, she said, looking over the light purple petals. My favorite. But why? Spike, can you put these in a vase for me? She asked, picking up the scroll and placing the bouquet on a nearby table. Then, with a quick tug, she pulled open the letter. And now back to the present. A short walk through the residential district later, Twilight found herself just outside the entrance to Canterlot Castle. The wooden drawbridge was lowered, and two stallion guards stood in their positions at each side of the bridge. The only acknowledgement that gave the purple pony was a faint nod as she passed between them, and they returned to their stone-like stances.
Yeesh.
As Twilight entered the main hall, she couldn't help but notice the lack of guards or other ponies. Usually there were at least a couple nobles lingering around, either awaiting an audience or on some other official business. To see the castle empty was so disconcerting at the very least. Her nervous thoughts were put to rest, though when she heard hoofsteps echo through the halls, looking for the origin of the noise, Twilight found none other than Celestia descending the steps. Oh, that's coming.
Something's going on.
That's coming from outside.
Sirens.
Twilight found no other than Princess Celestia descending the steps with a playful spring in her step.
Oh, dear God.
Okay. Greetings, Twilight, Celestia said, meeting her student at the base of the stairway. I'm quite pleased you made it to the castle with such haste. With a light flick, she brushed a bit of her ethereal mane. I guess that's how you say it. Well, you did say it was important, the unicorn replied with a slight smile. So did you get the flowers I sent? The princess asked with a wider-than-normal grin.
Cuteness.
Twilight couldn't put her hoof on it, but there was something off about her today. She appeared too happy to see her prized student. Sure, Celestia was happy to see her, but never like this, smiling, practically bouncing in place, and having some flowers before hoof. It was all very strange.
Hint, hint.
It was all very strange. So she did the only thing she could and played along. Why, yes, I did. They were very beautiful and they smelled great. How did you know that How did you know they were my favorite?
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose it was just a good guess. And a bit of alicorn wisdom, she added with a wink. That was when Twilight looked up at her and noticed that Celestia was wearing a pair of earrings today. Huh. That's definitely new. They were shaped like the sun with a small ruby in the middle of each. Judging by their luster and shine, they were probably real gold, too. Well, what do you expect? She's a princess. Right?
Yeah, true.
Twilight couldn't remember a time where the princess had ever worn jewelry besides her tiara, boots, and chest piece. Before she could think about it, Celestia spoke again. Now that you're here, why don't we walk together? With that, the princess turned and looked back at Twilight, the unicorn, to come beside her.
What are you doing, Celestia?
Okay. Come beside her. Okay, that's perfect. Of course, Twilight nodded and began to follow alongside Celestia. It wasn't until they reached the top of the steps that Twilight decided to ask her about the letter. So, princess, Celestia was quick to raise a wing and silence her student. With a sly grin, she said, "Please, there's no need to be so formal. Call me Selly."
Oh, by the way, I want to show you guys the back of my iPod because it's so boss.
Let me see.
You can see it, yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't. Oh, that is epic.
All my pony crap. Yay.
Yay.
That's an iPod. That's a manly iPod right there.
Well, anyway, she just called Twilight "Call me Selly."
Yee.
The unicorn could only look up to her mentor and gulp. Okay, if you insist. A sideways glance from Celestia made her catch her imminent slip-up. Selly.
That's odd.
The world felt foreign on her tongue, and she had to force her lips to make the sounds.
I would rather call her Tia.
Yeah, like Luna always did. The princess seemed pleased, though, so her effort to have been acceptable. So, Selly, what was so important that you needed me to come to Canterlot? Celestia looked to Twilight and gave her a cheeky grin. "Oh, I just wanted to spend some quality time with my favorite student is all." She turned forward and began to hum an unrecognizable tune, bouncing lightly in time with the music. So nothing serious is going on?" Twilight asked, trying to mask the dumbfounded look on her face. She had come all the way here because the princess wanted to see her. Nothing was threatening the safety of the world as they knew it. There were no monsters to fight, no curses to break, or ancient texts to study. That couldn't be right. Surely Celestia was joking.
Why would you be joking? She wants to spend some time with you. What's the big deal? I mean, for God's sakes, you're kind of like a daughter to her, I would say, or something like that.
Nothing at all. In fact, Equestria is the most peaceful it's been in many years. The princess gave a wink, then added, "I'm sure you had something to do with that, dear Twilight."
She's being very flirty.
Yeah. The unicorn could only blink and look forward, still trying to grasp the idea of where there had been summoned and rushed to Canterlot for nothing other than meeting with Celestia. She furrowed her brows and thought, "There has to be a reason I'm here. But what?" Before she could think about it more, a shadow came over her and she felt the touch of feathers at her side. They pressed against her and pushed her closer to the princess. Looking up, she saw Celestia keeping her pace as she nonchalantly wrapped a ring around Twilight. A chill went through the purple mare's spine despite feeling the warmth of Celestia's wing. Things were getting a bit too weird and a bit too touchy. Good word. She flashed Celestia a grin before pushing the wing away and taking a step to the side. Celestia glanced at Twilight and gave a soft frown, but after a few moments went back to her cheery demeanor. "So," she piped up, looking down at Twilight, "about your most recent friendship report, did Rainbow Dash and Applejack ever get that fight sorted out?" I guess they were in an argument.
What are they not?
True. That was when things began to click together. The flowers, the attitude, the earrings, touching her mane and wrapping her wing around her. Asking about the latest thing they talked about. These were all things that Twilight had been told to do in Dating Advice 101. What? Must be a book she had read.
You and your reading, Twilight.
For when you had feelings for some pony but didn't want to tell them, she silently cursed herself for not seeing earlier. And now it was too late. There was only one option, and it would be a long shot. "Actually, they didn't," she exclaimed, looking up Celestia with surprise. "In fact, I think I needed to talk with them today." Twilight then chuckled. "You know how those two can get sometimes." Taking a step back, she did a half-turn. "So, I should probably get back to Ponyville and help them out." "I mean, it was nice seeing you, Sally, but they could use my head." "Oh, nonsense, Twilight," the princess interrupted, encasing Twilight with a gold aura and turning her back. "I'm sure those two can handle one afternoon by themselves, don't you think?"
Oh boy. Usually all the fanfics I've read about Celestia and Twilight's the one who makes the move, not Celestia.
Psst. There went her plan. With a gulp, Twilight put on a false grin and said, "I suppose they can." "That's what I like to hear." Celestia began to walk again, with Twilight having no choice but to follow her. "Besides, you should take some time and relax. I'm sure you're very busy, are you not?" "I guess I am," the unicorn croaked, still forcing her smile. By this point, they had reached the stained glass door that led outside, which Celestia had already walked through. Twilight followed behind her quickly, finding herself in the midst of the Royal Canterlot Gardens. Here, flora and fauna from all around Equestria existed, and it was hailed as one of the most beautiful places to exist. Ah, the Royal Garden, Celestia mused, breathing in the garden air. She stepped lightly along the stone path that guided visitors through the scenic landscape. The princess then turned to Twilight, who was walking quietly along next to her. I'm sure Twilight knows what's going on, but if I was Twilight and this doesn't get the message across, I don't know what would be. I didn't know what would. Did you know the Royal Garden is one of the most romantic places to go? At least that's what I keep hearing.
I think Twilight might have some mixed feelings about this right now. I'm not saying that she does that she's not in love with her, but maybe she's not like that. If
yeah.
You drift, I don't know. Like, it's an interesting fanfic.
Yeah, it is. She was right, of course. Couples were always frequently visiting the gardens, and it was a surprisingly common place for ponies to propose to their mates.
Oh boy.
However, today was more quiet than normal. Yeah, I did know that, Twilight said, looking around the garden. Aren't there usually more ponies here? Celestia chuckled, then said, Oh, usually, yes. However, I had the gardens reserved today. It's just you and me, Twilight. Oh, great, the unicorn replied, feeling the hairs on her neck prick up.
You're not getting the drift, Twilight!
It's a very beautiful garden, that's for sure. Continuing their walk, Twilight began to observe the types of plants around them. They had moved into a section composed of many varieties of flowers, from roses to lilies to petunias to lilac. There, off to the side, was a fresh bed of purple flowers that swayed lightly in the breeze. Now she knew where the bouquet had come from. The cuteness.
That's one of the most adorable pictures I've ever seen.
They're all eating cookies.
Alright, keep going.
So, Twilight, I've been consulting with my gardeners on a new flower bed. However, I value your opinion greatly. If you would be so kind, I would like your input as well. Celestia motioned to an area of tile dirt that was surrounded by decorative fencing. Now, I've been considering either a combination of yellow rose and chrysanthemum, I don't know, or slightly more exotic lunar tulip mixed with snow daffodils. What do you think? Twilight pondered the question, but her mind was focusing elsewhere. She blinked a few times before saying, Oh, lunar tulips are nice. I was thinking that as well. I suppose I'll have to go and find some then. Now they had reached the opposite side of the garden and the exit out. Celestia opened the door and stepped inside with Twilight, only to go across the hall to a pair of large double doors with Celestia's cutie mark emblazoned on the wood. There was no noticeable methods to opening them until the princess's horn began to glow. With a low creak, they swung inwards, revealing a dim room. Well, if it's Celestia's cutie mark on the door, this has to be her room.
Maybe.
Please, step inside. Celestia waved at Who, motioning for Twilight to step inside. The protege's violet eyes started from the princess to the room, and after a moment she gave a sigh and walked in. Don't get me wrong, I think Twilight knows what's going on. She's just trying to see how far the princess is willing to go.
Yeah.
Slight sigh and walked in. From the looks of things, this was Celestia's personal chamber. Yep, I was right. A great bed stood at the end of the room with large windows around it in an arc. However, they were covered by flowing maroon curtains which had been drawn over them. They served a purpose of blocking the day. This was the only other light source in the room. There were many candles spread about along with the ornate, however you say it, chandelier, its flames flickering and casting shadows along the floor and ceiling. The candles were of various scents which, when blended together, provided an inviting aroma. Twilight could pick up the hints of lavender and a trace of vanilla in the mix. Stepping into the room farther, she could swear she felt petals under her hoofs, but she didn't want to check to see what kind.
Oh, God.
In her mind, though, she knew they were rose. Then Twilight's eyes trailed off to the foot of the bed, where a silver vase sat. Poking up from the top of it was the neck of a bottle. The
Yeah.
fine mist permeating from an opening in the container told herself there was ice in it. Oh no. I guess Twilight said that out loud.
Yep.
Oh yes, Twilight chimed in, walking past Twilight.
Celestia chimed in.
Celestia chimed in. Walking past Twilight behind them, and the telltale sound of 2 doors closing reverberated. The princess then walked in front of Twilight and motioned around. Well, what do you think? It's, Twilight looked around and frowned softly. It's relaxing. And it's relaxing. Okay, right there. Seemingly unaware of Twilight's mood, Celestia nodded and turned around, looking over the room. That's just what I was hoping. Nice and relaxing for my student and I.
Oh, God.
She then stepped to the bed and climbed on it, shifting around until she was comfortable. Celestia turned her head to Twilight and patted the area next to her. Come, Twilight. Have a seat. Enjoy yourself. The unicorn took one last look to the closed doors before sighing, setting her bags aside and walking forward. She put on a smile, but each step was tentative and forced. A multitude of thoughts spun through her head. Most dedicated to what was going to happen, dedicated to what was happening in the following moments, and more importantly, what she was going to tell Celestia. Twilight crawled onto the bed and took her place next to the unicorn, but at a comfortable distance. She looked up to the princess, who merely smiled back. Then both of their faces became illuminated by the glow of Celestia's horn. From the ice-filled vase came the bottle, which was filled with a bright golden liquid and plugged with a crude-looking cork. Champagne. Celestia brought the bottle near her face and looked over it with approval. Hold on, I want to get a pillow too. Before continuing this.
And my leg was starting to get a little numb, so I had to sit down and lay down.
You wouldn't guess it, but this bottle of champagne is over 1,000 years old. It's been around since before the Nightmare Moon incident, and I've been keeping close watch over it ever since. She flowed the bottle near Twilight so she could get a good look at it. I've been saving it for a very special occasion.
Oh boy.
She then brought the bottle back to her. Her eyes scanned the label for a moment. In fact, this bottle was, Princess, please, just stop. Celestia looked up in alarm and turned to Twilight, who had one hoof covering her face and the other held up the silence. The princess glanced around and gave a light laugh before asking, Twilight, dear, is something wrong? Twilight sighed and shook her head. I know what you're trying to do, princess. She then looked at Celestia and hardened her gaze. And I'm sorry, but I have to decline.
Aww.
Celestia's magic faltered for the briefest second as the bottle of champagne fell a small distance before being snatched up by a faint gold aura. A gulp came from the deity as she looked to her deity or whatever, as she looked to her student. Whatever do you mean, Twilight? The purple mare frowned before continuing. I've seen all the signs, princess. The earrings, the compliments, your general mood. Then she motioned around the room as a whole. All of this? Turning back to Celestia, she said, I think it's fairly obvious what you're trying to tell me. And I hate to say it, but I'm just not that kind of mare.
Yeah, I figured.
But Twilight, we've known each other for so long. I've looked over you since you were a filly, and I've taken much consideration into this, Celestia said, the smile fading from her face. I know you must have, princess, but things just wouldn't work between us.
Why not?
Celestia's mood changed to that of desperation as she opened her mouth to say something. On the third attempt, she croaked, Well, why not? Twilight brought a hoof to her mouth and cleared her throat before the princess and gave a solemn look. And speaking, For one, you are 1,000 years old and practically a goddess. No matter what, you're going to outlive me, princess. Even if you could cast some sort of spell to make me live longer, it would make no difference at the end. I would still pass on before the first signs of aging appeared.
That's true.
The princess gave a slight nod and stayed quiet. Twilight continued, Second, you're far too busy to be involved in a serious relationship. My years of growing up around the castle have shown me that. Every day you are constantly attending royal matters and keeping Equestria in check. Even if you put your sister in charge of some duties, you still won't have time to give a lover the appropriate amount of time. Again, that is true. Another nod. Finally, well, Twilight's cheeks began to turn a bright crimson as she averted her gaze and looked downwards. I'm what you would consider straight. After a brief pause, she took a breath and looked back to the princess with much dignity as she could muster. So, it wouldn't work in that regard. And I'd like to be a mother someday. Only a stallion can help me accomplish that, so I'm sorry. I see. Celestia murmured, lowering her head and looking down at her forelegs. The two of them remained silent, with only the noise being the flaring of the candles and the soft swaying of the princess's mane. In the dim light, Twilight could make out Celestia's eyes beginning to glisten.
This is sad.
Oh, she's crying.
What do you expect? She just got rejected by the opponent she loved.
That's true. Oh, no. The unicorn started reaching a hoop out. The princess was quick to raise her own, halting Twilight's movement. Please, Twilight, the alicorn whispered, closing her eyes. I need a moment to collect myself. Twilight pulled back her hoof, hurt, but not as hurt as she knew Celestia was. While she had no dating experience of her own, she had read enough advice books and novels about the subject to understand that a great blow had just been dealt to the princess's heart. Twilight would need to plan her next words out with care and consideration. She waited several moments, giving both Celestia time to reflect and herself to think of what to say. Finally, she let out her breath and began to speak in a soft, caring tone. Princess, I know you're feeling hurt right now, and I'm sorry for that, but it isn't all bad. Even though I don't love you as a partner, she moved over a bit and placed her hoof on Celestia's own. I still love you as a teacher, a mentor, and a great friend. Go on. We've known each other so long that we've formed a special kind of bond together. You're like a second mother to me, Princess, and I care for you deeply, just not the same way as you care for me. She gave Celestia a pleading look. Surely with your years of wisdom you understand that. The princess brought a hoof to her face and wiped her eyes, revealing a smile as she rested on the bed. I didn't expect the evening to go like this, but I suppose I'm glad I asked you now rather than later. It would have pained me more if I had waited longer. She then took a breath and continued. And Twilight, I thank you for being honest with me. There are few ponies who would turn down a princess. So your bravery is appreciated. Bravery is appreciated. Twilight let out a sigh of relief and rubbed her brow. I'm glad you understand. Now do not misinterpret me. Just because I'm smiling on the outside doesn't mean I'm content on the inside. It will take some time for me to accept your decision and come to terms with the disappointment, Celestia added, her look briefly becoming stern. The purple unicorn's smile faded and her voice lowered into a murmur. I understand. Another silence fell over the two as they ran out of things to say. Twilight made her stance clear and Celestia confessed her pain. There was nothing more that needed to be said. One problem that had gone unresolved, though, was the bottle. A cold drop on her leg caused the Sun Princess to perk up and look to the container. Beads of water condensing on the surface and sliding to the bottom of the cold glass. Celestia glanced from the bottle to Twilight several times and then asked, Twilight, would you like to share this bottle with me? Twilight blinked for a few moments in surprise at the question. Are you sure? I thought you were going to save it for something special. This is special, Celestia said, and brought out 2 champagne glasses from the container from behind the vase. Then floated one in front of Twilight, who took it in her own aura.
Well, I have to say something. This is gonna sound terrible, but Celestia, you're going to get her drunk, are you? Then you're going to take advantage.
Oh my god.
What?
She effortlessly uncorked the bottle, which gave off a fine mist, tipping into her student's glass and filled it part way. Then did the same thing to her own. Finally, she set the bottle back in the ice.
Drink, Twilight, then I will have my way.
Celestia slightly sighed and began to tip the glass into her mouth, but paused. "We should perform a toast," she said, lowering the glass. Motioning to Twilight, she asked, "Would you care to do the honor?" The unicorn thought for a moment, looking to her mentor. Even though things hadn't turned out as she planned, they were still there for each other. They did not harbor any negative feelings, and they still cared for each other, like mother and daughter.
Yeah.
Celestia would always be there for her guidance and support, and Twilight would always be there for her learning and training.
Yay.
"To the greatest of teachers," the student said with a soft smile. "To the most faithful of students," the mentor replied, returning the gesture. They tapped their glasses together and drank. The end.
That was cute.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, it was kind of disappointing that the whole thing had to go that way.
Yeah,
but it was nice. It
was a nice story. Yes.
Yeah.
And
she's getting her drunk, and then she's going to have her way with her.
I don't think so.
I'm just joking around, you jerk.
I know. Anyways, this is JTH
and Tailsthehero
with my new sonic screwdriver, and we will see you in our next video.
Au revoir.
Goodbye.